Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our weekly Thursday morning Parsha Shiur. We actually have some special sponsors this morning for the Shiur. Today's Shiur is sponsored by Dr. Stewart and Regina Goldman on the birth of a new great-granddaughter. Mazel tov to them, mazel tov to the parents, Michal and Moti Last of Riverdale, New York. Mazel tov to the grandparents, Dr. Howard and Suri Goldman of Cleveland, Ohio, and Ira and Chaya Last of New York City. Mazel tov to you. Lange gesundte Jahren. Many happy, healthy years, and lots of simchas. Today's shiur is also sponsored by Phyllis Miller, L'ili Nishmas, Dr. Susan Belgrade's mother, whose name was Rochel Bas Yitzchak, who actually passed away just about a week and a half ago. I believe Shiva ended just a couple of days ago. When the Neshama should have an aliyah. I want to mention that Mrs. Rochel Gross attended many of my shiurim on Shabbos and Shul for many years, and she'd always, sit up front and be an eager participant. Her neshama should have an aliyah. She merited to have arichas yamim b'shanim tovos. And for her and for Susan and for the entire family, we wish you only brachas and simchas and lange gesundte Jahren. And of course, thank you very much for your sponsorship. It's how people like me make the big bucks. Baruch Hashem. Okay. And now, my dear friends, let's study Parsha. If you have a chumash in front of you, open to this week's Parsha, Perek Lamed. We're going to start from Possuk Lamed Aleph. Parshas Vayetze, chapter 30, verse 31, Perek Lamed, Possuk Lamed Aleph. So the story here, the backdrop, is that Yakov has spent our forefather, Yaakov Avinu, has spent 20 years in the home of his uncle, his mother's brother, Lavan. Lavan is now also Yaakov's father-in-law because he's married, four of Lavan's daughters, Leah, Rachel, Bila, and Zilpah. And he's worked hard for 20 years. He's shepherded for 20 years. Yaakov has shepherded Lavan's flock. At the end of 20 years, Yaakov comes to Lavan and says, look, it's time for me to go. I'd like to go back to my hometown, to my land. Give me my wives and my children that I've worked so hard for. And basically Lavan agrees. But there's one small little detail that they have to work out, the two of them. It's like that little, that little annoying little nuance that they've got to settle, that Lavan and Yaakov, father-in-law and son-in-law, uncle and nephew, have to settle before Yaakov takes his leave. And that is the petty little issue called money. Jengi in Russian, pecha mecha in whatever language that is. Yaakov's got to get paid. So it's true that until this point, it was clear that Yaakov worked first 7 years. Well, he thought they would be for Rachel. They ended up being for Leah. Then another 7 years for Rachel. And he's worked, that was 14 years, and he worked another 6 years after that. It's true that, in the meanwhile, he's married, and he has, Baruch Hashem, at this stage, he has 11 sons. So things have gone well, but still, bottom line, when it's time to close the contract, you gotta pay him out. So a discussion ensues between Yaakov and Lavan with regard to payment. And of course, Yaakov, the Torah, has painted to us as an ish tam, Yoshev Holim, as a honest man, as a straightforward man, as a simple, honest, hard-working, 20 years worked and toiled man, and Lavan is the scammer. Lavan is pardon the expression, is that jerk boss, again, pardon the expression, who's really taking advantage of Yaakov. And now again, it's time for Yaakov to go, so they discuss money. Again, Perek Lamed, Possuk Lamed Aleph. Vayomer, and Lavan says to Yaakov, Mo eten loch. I'm picking up in the middle of conversation, but I want to stick to the one part. So Lavan says to Yaakov, okay, what should I give you? What would you like as payment? Now, again, the simple understanding, Yaakov knows he's dealing with a schemer here. So he's got to kind of mastermind this. He's got to scheme this thing himself. Otherwise, he'll end up with nothing. Yaakov says, you know what? Don't give me anything. Well, just don't pay me. Don't give me anything of what you already have. We'll make a deal. We'll make an arrangement. Im tasli hadover hazeh ashuva eret soincho eshmor. He says, look, Yaakov says, let's make a deal. I'll go back and continue tending to the flock in the meanwhile, and we'll have the following arrangement. What's the arrangement? Possuk lamed beis. This is Yaakov's proposal. Ever b'chol soincho hayom. Let's go through I will pass through all of the flock today. I'll do a check over all the, what's it called? Over all the merchandise, over all the stuff stored. Inventory, there's the word I'm looking for. I'll go through all the livestock inventory. Ever b'chol tzayin chayon. Hoser mishom, we will remove from there, we will remove from all the inventory, from all the sheep. Kol se nokoid v'tolu, every spotted and speckled sheep. V'chol sechum, and every brown sheep or every dark sheep, akvosim. V'tolu v'nokoid v'izim, or every spotted or speckled goat. V'hoya schori, and that will be my payment. According to Rashi, what they meant, there are different ways of learning here, but what they meant was that inventory would be taken. All the spotted, speckled, brown sheep and goats would immediately be removed from the herd. They would be taken to a faraway place. What would be left behind is only the white animals, only the white sheep and goats. And from here on until Yaakov leaves, which is the date of Yaakov's departure, is not explicit, is not articulated, till an uncertain point in the future. Any sheep, any animal that's born with spots, any brown that's speckled or something like that, that will be Yaakov's payment. And all of the regular, all of the non-speckled, non-spotted white sheep would remain for Lavan. Okay. What is the brilliance? What is the chachma of this system? What's the other chachma? Says Yaakov. So then at any point in the future, if you, Lavan, will have any complaints against me, my righteousness, the fact that I've taken the moral and financial high road will be apparent and obvious. At any point, says Yaakov to Lavan, if you dispute, if you feel that I've taken something from you unjustly, you can come and look at my animals. You can come and look at my payment. Anything that isn't spotted or speckled among the goats, or dark or spotted or speckled among the sheep, will be considered stolen. If I walk away with one animal that isn't spotted, speckled, or brown, you'll know I'm a ganef. But if all the animals that I take are spotted and speckled and brown, then you'll know that I've taken only what's rightfully mine. Vayomer Lavan hein, and Lavan says, great. Lu yehi kidvarecha. Its simple meaning is Lavan says, I accept. It's going to be exactly as you said. Okay. Again, there's 1,000 different, there's many nuances here. I want to just stick to, I don't want to get lost in the details because not chas v'shalom lost, but I'm saying there's somewhere I want to go with this. But for now, let's learn this according to the simple understanding of Chumash and Rashi. The deal was the following. Among the sheep, there are mostly white, among the sheep and goats, there are mostly white animals, and there are some that are spotted, speckled, and brown. Generally speaking, the commentary is right. The spotted animals, the speckled, the brown, they're considered inferior, right? Again, I'm not much of a farmer, but this is my understanding of what the commentary is right. They're considered inferior. So Yaakov knows that if he asks Lavan to pay him bakovadik, if he asks Lavan to pay him, a healthy wage, Lavan's gonna get out of it. So Yaakov figures, you know what? I'll ask him for the shvacha, for the inferior schoira, for the inferior merchandise. The speckled and the spotted animals will be mine, and it'll be obvious. The speckled and spotted animals, they don't hide their spots. It'll be obvious that I haven't taken anything from you, because when I walk away, you can check if you want. You can take a look. You'll see all the animals that I take are all spotted and speckled and brown and all the rest of it. And in order to make the deal even sweeter for Lavan, so that Lavan doesn't come back later with any arguments and tinus, Yaakov says to Lavan, you know what? We'll start with right now separating all the spotted and speckled animals and taking them away. right? So you won't say that I've taken an animal that was speckled from beforehand, or that the spotted animals fathered other spotted animals. Take all the spotted animals away. In fact, Lavan ends up taking them away, a 3-day journey. We'll be left with only white animals, and whatever the herd, the white herd, produces in spotted and speckled animals, this will be my payment. And Lavan agrees, and everything is, at least at this point, seems gavaldik. Okay. What actually happens? You all know the story. Yaakov has a bit of a plan up his sleeve, as we'll discuss soon, and he somehow has a way, he's figured out a way with sticks or something to stimulate these white animals to have spotted and speckled children. And so the herd produces a tremendous amount of spotted and speckled sheep and cattle and goats. This becomes Yaakov's payment, and actually Yaakov actually successfully becomes tremendously wealthy. The Possuk will say soon. Becomes absolute. The Torah says Yaakov becomes exceedingly wealthy from this deal, and so much so that he even sells some of the animals, and he buys servants and maidservants and donkeys and camels, etc., etc. And Yaakov leaves Lavan's house with great wealth. Okay. Here's where it starts to get very, very, here's one inkling, here's one window into this discussion where the story takes on a whole new, at least a part of it takes on a whole new different meaning and perspective. On the words in Possuk Lamed Gimel, V'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mocher. My tzidkus, my righteousness will answer for me in the future, says Yaakov to Lavan. If you ever have any complaints, if you ever have any kindness, you look at my flock and see that they're all spotted and speckled and brown. On these words, there is a harrowing, my dear friends, harrowing Midrash. Midrash Rabba, Bereishis, Parsha Ayin Gimel, section 73, Perek Tes. V'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mocher. On these words of Yaakov, my righteousness will testify in my behalf b'yoyim mocher tomorrow. Says the Midrash. It's short, it's 3 lines. I'm going to read it for you inside. Scary stuff. Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon Omar. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Simon, said, see if the Possuk says in Mishlei, Perek Chav Zayin, Possuk Aleph, Al tishalel b'yoyim mocher, says the Possuk. Do not pride yourself. Do not boast about what's going to happen tomorrow. Don't boast. Don't ever boast about what's going to happen tomorrow. The same words. B'yoyim mocher. Yaakov said, "V'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mocher." Says the Midrash. The Possuk says, "Al tishalel b'yoyim mocher." Don't boast about what's going to happen tomorrow. Says the Rabbi Shloim to Yaakov Avinu, "Ata amarta v'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mocher." You dared say that your righteousness will testify on your behalf, that your righteousness will defend you b'yoyim mocher. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. The Rabbi Shalom said, don't ever boast about what's going to happen b'yoyim mocher. You know what's going to happen as a result of what you said. You know what's going to happen l'mocher? You know what's going to happen tomorrow? L'mocher bitcha yoytze sumis'ana rachman al-itzlan. Tomorrow your daughter is going to go out and be violated. Shneimar, as the Possuk says, Vateitzei Dina bas Leah. Dina, the daughter of Leah, goes out. She's discovered by Shechem. This is the story the Midrash is referring to, a story that happens in next week's Parsha. She's discovered by Shechem. The Torah says, Vayishka voiso vaye'aneho, that Shechem violated Dina intimately, in a terrible way. Says the Midrash, the fact that Dina was captured and violated was the Rabbeinu Shalom's response to Yaakov Avinu telling Lavan, "V'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mocher." My righteousness will stand in trial for me b'yoyim mocher tomorrow. He told Lavan, if there'll ever be any complaints, my righteousness, spotted, speckled animals, will testify on my behalf b'yoyim mocher. As soon as he says those words, the Rabbeinu Shalom said, "How dare you? Al tishalel b'yoyim mocher." Don't boast about what's going to happen tomorrow. You said v'ansa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mocher l'mocher bitcha yoytza mis'ana. Tomorrow your daughter will be violated. It's also, the Midrash is also picking up on another nuance here. In addition to the fact that Yaakov said b'yoy mocher, and the Possuk says al tisalel b'yoy mocher, Yaakov says ve'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoy mocher. Simply, the word ve'onsa means it'll answer for me. In other words, if there'll be any challenges against me tomorrow, ve'onsa the deal, says Yaakov, will answer on my behalf. The spots on the animal will answer for me. But the word ve'onsa is also used in the context of Dina's violation. Because the Possuk says that Shem discovered Dinah, Vayishka voisa, he was intimate with her, Vayaneho, and he violated her. Same word, Vayaneho. So because Yaakov said, V'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoy mochar, says the Rabbi Shalom, tomorrow, l'mochar bitcha yoytza misana, tomorrow your daughter will be violated, as it says, Vayetze Dinah basleya. Okay, this is the Midrash. All right. I want to ask you today, Be'ezras Hashem, 7 questions. Let's see if we can go through them one at a time. Number 1 is the very obvious question. Hashoifet kol ha'oretz lo yasa mishpat Rabbeinu Shalom. The judge of the whole world, Almighty God, who is supposed to be kol derochav mishpat, all his ways are supposed to be just and righteous and pure and sensible and logical and measure for measure, etc., etc. What is the Midrash saying? That because Yaakov told Lavan, a known scammer, because Yaakov anticipates that at some point there's going to be issues here with the payment, which of course there was, because he anticipates this correctly, and he tells Lavan, we have to make a deal in which I'll be able to defend myself, clearly, because he said that, Hashem said, you're not supposed to boast about what's going to happen tomorrow. Now, and because of this, your daughter will be violated. Wow. We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu medakdek b'tzadikim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so careful with tzadikim, kechut asayir, like a hair's breadth beseder. But it's very difficult to understand here what Bechlal Yaakov did wrong. The Possuk says, don't boast about tomorrow. Yaakov's boasting about tomorrow. What's he? He's gloating about tomorrow. Why? Because he's making a deal with Lavan in which he'll get paid for 20 years of service. That's considered gloating. And even if it is gloating somehow, for this he deserves Rahman al-Islam, that his daughter should be violated like that? Mind-boggling. That's question number 1. Question number 2, it gets worse. In next week's Parsha, the Possuk describes that Yaakov actually, after Yaakov actually finally does leave Lavan's house, he's traveling with his family. And the Possuk says, Vayokam balaylo hu, he gets up at that night, and he takes his wives, his shtei noshav, his 2 wives, his shtei shivchosav, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, and he crosses a river. The Torah refers to it as Mavar Yabok. A river called Mavar Yamak. All right, he crosses the river. It's a famous story because he goes back for something that he left behind, and there he wrestles with the Malach of Esav. You all know the story. But before we get to that story, the Midrash is intrigued by something. What do you mean, says the Midrash? His 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children. He doesn't have 11 children. He has 11 sons. But he also has Dinah, a daughter. So he has 12 children. The Dinah heichani, says the Midrash. What happened to Dinah? Says the Midrash is very famous. You all know this. Nesana b'teva v'noal b'foneha. He put her in a box, and he locked it. He put Dinah in a box, and he locked her in there. Why? Omar, Yaakov says, again, we're talking now later in Parshas Vayishlach. When Yaakov is on his way back home, he knows he has to meet his brother Esav. He's taking his wives, his maidservants, his 11 sons. He locks Dinah up in a box. Omar, says Yaakov, Harosha hazeh, this Rosha, this evil man, Esav, Einoi ro'o, Einoi romohi. Translation, Harosha hazeh Einoi rohi. This man, Esav, his eyes are raised. Meaning, this guy Esav notices everything. You can say a lot of things about Esav, but he definitely is observant. He was concerned Says Yaakov says he was concerned shlo yitle einav, that Esav shouldn't raise his eyes. V'yira Eisa, and see his daughter Dinah. V'yikach Eisa mimenu, and take Dinah as a wife. Yaakov locked Dinah up in a box so that she would not catch the eye of Esav, because Yaakov was afraid, that if she did catch the eye of Esav, Esav would take her and marry her. Says the Midrash. Omar, Yaakov, again, Yaakov said, this Rasha Esav has elevated eyes. He has elevated eyes. Shloit Leinov, he was concerned that Esav shouldn't raise his eyes, and notice Dinah, see Dinah, and take her away from me, marry her. Rab Huna, b'shem Rab Abba HaKoyen Bardlo, Rab Huna, in the name of Rab Abba HaKoyen Bardlo said, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rabbanu Shloim, didn't like that. Omar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said to him, Lomas mere'ehu chosed, you withhold kindness from your fellow. Lomas mere'ehu chosed, you withhold kindness from your fellow. Manato mere'yacha chosed, you're withholding kindness from your mere'yacha. You're withholding kindness from your fellow. Monato chisto min ochoch, and you're withholding kindness from your brother. The Ilu is the Rabbanu Shloim was not happy that Yaakov locked Dinah up in a box. And even though Yaakov was right, that if he hadn't locked her up in a box, Esav would have noticed her. And if Esav would have noticed her, Esav would have married her. Says the Rabbanu Shloim, who are you to withhold this kindness from your brother? The Ilu is, and the Rabbanu Shloim was so upset with Yaakov for this. The Ilu is Nasivas Legavra. So. Had Dinah married Esav, she would have never been violated by Shechem. The whole story of Shechem would not have happened if Yaakov would have allowed Dinah to marry Esav. Yaakov was punished for locking Dinah up in a box and withholding her from Esav. The punishment was that Dinah was discovered by Shechem and violated by her. Now the commentaries say the simple meaning of this is that Shechem, as much of a depraved human being as he was, he would never go after a married woman. Never mind. If she was married to Esav, he would have been afraid of her husband. I'm adding that. But the commentaries say he would have never gone after her married woman. At the time, Dinah was not married. Says the Midrash, why wasn't she married? She would have been married to Esav, but she wasn't married to Esav because Yaakov locked her up in a box. Says the Rabbanu Shloim to Yaakov, you should have allowed Dinah to marry Esav. Lomas mere'ehu chosed, you withheld kindness from your colleague, from your friend, minachuch, from your brother. If you would have married her, if she would have married him, she wouldn't have been violated by Shechem. Okay. So, question number 2. So, which sin of Yaakov is it that somehow results in Dinah end up being violated by Shechem? Was it the fact that he said "V'ansa b'tzid kasi," that he said those words to Lavan, and the Rabbanu Shloim told him "Al tishalel b'yoy mocher," don't gloat about tomorrow? Or was it the fact that he locked Dinah up in a box? Seems like a contradiction here. One Midrash says because he said those words, therefore Dinah was violated. Okay, that means once he said those words, it was destined upon him to suffer this aggravation of a violated daughter. What difference does it make if you put her in a box or not? The other Midrash says because he put her in a box, the Rabbanu Shloim said had she married Esav, she wouldn't be violated by Shechem. Okay, so then what difference does it make if he says "Vansa b'tzid kasi"? It's because he locked her up. So which one is it? Difficult to understand. Now, I just want to add something here, just for the sake of clarity. Of course, the Rabbanu Shloim doesn't punish one person for someone else's sins. We don't mean that Dinah is violated because of Yaakov's sins. Dinah has her own cheshbon. Dinah has, so to speak, her own, whatever it is that goes on with her for why she has to travel that journey. The vort here is a different vort. The vort is Yaakov also suffers when his daughter Dinah is violated. That's the pshat. The pshat, in other words, the Midrash is talking about what infraction or what was it in Yaakov's end that earned him, so to speak, the admas nefesh, the pain of knowing, of experiencing his daughter being violated. What did he do wrong, so to speak? This you have these two midrashim. One Midrash says "V'ansa b'tzid kasi," the other one says because manata chesed, because he withheld Dinah from Esav. Okay. By the way, there's a lot of other questions on that Midrash of Yaakov withholding Dinah from Esav. I mean, what in heaven's name did he do wrong? The commentaries say, okay, if Dinah would have married Esav, then she would have made Esav into a Baal tshuva, and Esav would have done tshuva, so Yaakov withheld Esav from doing tshuva, which makes the question the other way. So then why did Yaakov lock her up in a box? There's much to discover there too. But for today, I just want to get into this part. What in other words, which infraction of Yaakov is it that is responsible for this? Okay. Question 3. I'm digging deeper. Those of you who were at this past Shabbos at the Shabbos Shiur, my apologies. I'm going to repeat a Midrash that I said on Shabbos. Those who weren't, you probably, the parts of this Midrash are famous anyways. Here is another hair-raising Midrash. The Torah tells us later when we get to the story of Yosef, I believe in Parshas Vayetze, the Torah tells us that Yosef marries a woman called Osnat. The Torah describes Osnat as Osnat Bas Potifera. Says the Midrash, this Midrash is from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer means the Midrashim of Rabbi Eliezer from the days of the Mishnah. We're talking about a Midrash that's more than 2,000 years old. Says the Midrash, Mi hoisa Osnat. Who was this? One day the Torah tells us, Yosef marries Osnat. In fact, the Possuk says more. Perek gave him, Vayiten lo yas Osnat. Perek gave him Osnat as a wife. Says the Midrash, who was Osnat? We have the following tradition. That when Dinah had her brush with Shechem, actually her experience with Shechem, her violation, actually she became pregnant. Dinah was impregnated by Shechem. The Yoldas Osnas, and she gave birth to a daughter, and they named her Osnas. Yaakov's sons, when they liberated Dinah from Shechem and wiped out the city, eventually 9 months later, Dinah has this daughter Osnas. The sons of Yaakov, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, etc., they want to kill Osnas. Why? This daughter. What? This baby girl. Why? They said it's not. The brothers were very uncomfortable with the fact that a child was born in their family, in our family. In our family, a child was born in this way from Shechem, from this man, this foreigner who violated our daughter, this guy. They wanted to kill the girl. They felt her existence was a stain on the family, which, by the way, is fascinating because the brothers also wanted to kill Yosef. So in the end, when Yosef marries Osnas, besides for the fact that Osnas is Yosef's niece, right, through Yosef's half-sister Dinah, they shared a father. Besides for that, one other thing that they have in common is that they were both hunted. They were both at one stage wanted to be killed by the sons of Yaakov. Yaakov didn't want them to kill Osnas. What did he do? Ma'asa Yaakov. He took a silver plate. Heavy tzitz. He brought a tzitz. A tzitz is like a. The word tzitz is used by the Kohen Gadol in the base of Midrash. He brought like a plate, a piece of silver or gold or something like that. He wrote on it one of Hashem's names, turned it into a necklace for her, and sent her out. Sent her off. The Midrash says she was picked up, Osnas. Doesn't say how old she was, but at some point, Yaakov banishes her from the home to save her life. Yaakov banishes her from the home just with this necklace, with this ornament, a plate of sorts with Hashem's name on it. The angel Michal comes and takes her to Mitzrayim. And there she ends up being raised by a woman called Potifera. Potifera, in fact, is barren. She's unable to have children. She raises this daughter as her own. And when she grows up, she marries Yosef. When Yosef comes to Mitzrayim, they get married. And they have Menashe and Ephraim. Ephraim and Menashe, Yosef's sons. Their father was Yosef. Their mother was Osnas. Okay? So now I want to ask you question number 3. In the end, Ephraim and Menashe become what part of the 12 Shvatim, right? Remember Yaakov says, Ephraim and Menashe Keruven v'Shimon yiyuli. Ephraim and Menashe will be like Reuven and Shimon. And Ephraim and Menashe are the children of Osnas. Their mother is Osnas. Osnas' mother is Dinah. Osnas' father is Shechem. So as a result of this experience, Rahman al-Tzlan, of Dinah being violated by Shechem, Osnas is born. And from this come 2 out of the 12 Shvatim. So here we are, so to speak. The Midrash is coming after Yaakov von alle Seiten, auf rechts and auf links. Right? The Rabban Shalom says, how dare you say, and the Rabban Shalom says, how dare you withhold Dinah from Esav? She would have, how dare you withhold this kindness? And the commentary says, you would make Esav about Shuvah, as a result, consequences. Trach. What's the consequences? Dinah is violated by Shem, Rahman al-Islam. From this is born Osnas. And from Osnas comes Ephraim and Menashe. So actually, it's massive. This stuff boggles my mind. So actually, as a result of all this, not only in the end are the repercussions. In other words, not only do you have to see the story through the end, not only is there a positive spin on the story, but actually the whole thing comes full circle. Yaakov himself, who got the whole thing rolling, in the end goes down to Mitzrayim. He blesses Ephraim and Menashe. Ephraim and Menashe, Keruven v'Shimon Yuli, and Ephraim and Menashe are descendants of Shem, who violated Dinah because of what Yaakov said and did. If the Midrash is so insistent that Yaakov did the wrong thing, how does this come full circle and give us 12 and complete the 12 Shvat? Okay, that's question 3. Question 4, I'm digging deeper. Yaakov is Ishtam, Yoshev Eholem, the Chaychus to Zogim. Yaakov is a tzaddik. Yaakov is, I don't mean to be cynical, Chas v'shalom, but Yaakov is like painted by the Torah as Mr. Innocent, just trying to make an innocent living. Yeah, Beseder. Read the story. Yaakov pulled off an incredibly complicated, nuanced, and really phenomenal plot here. Actually, if you pay attention in the Pessukim and Rashi, what Yaakov pulled off with Lavan's sheep was miraculous. A miraculous birth explosion takes place. As soon as Lavan and Yaakov, as soon as the ink dries in the contract, so to speak, between Lavan and Yaakov, a birth explosion in Lavan's sheep takes place that is staggering. Yaakov devises a whole plan. He peels sticks. He puts them in the drinking troughs, and the sheep start having children. And would you know it? All the children, or most of the children, or all the strong sheep, and all the strong goats, and all the strong animals that are born are spotted, speckled, and striped. All right, and Rashi says, Lavan tried to change the deal 100 times. Every time Lavan tried to change the deal, not spotted, speckled, spotted, not brown, white, gray, blue. Whatever Lavan stipulated, those are the sheep that were born. There's a Rashi here. How did Yaakov do this? There's a Rashi here. Later on in Possuk Lamed Ches, as it describes how Yaakov would display these sticks in the drinking troughs, the sheep would come to drink, and they would see these sticks. The Possuk says, "Vayechamno bevoyon lishtois." They would become heated. They would become heated when they would come to drink. Maybe it means they would go into heat when they would come to drink. Along Rashi says the animals would rush away. They got scared. They would rush away, and then the male animals would come and impregnate them, etc. I want to read 3 lines from Rashi. Rabbi Hoshaya Omer says Rashi. Rabbi Hoshaya says, Hamayim nasin zera b'mei'ehen v'loi hoyu tzrichos l'zochor v'zehu vayechamno. You know what it means when the Possuk says vayechamno, that the sheep would become heated when they would drink? Not that they would just go into heat and they would be impregnated by the males. No. Rashi brings an opinion from the Midrash that the water that they drank, the water the animals drank, would go into their systems. The water would turn into zera, would turn into seed, into animal seed, and impregnate them. They didn't even need a male animal. That's the deeper meaning of Vayechamnu. Mr. Innocent, Rabbi Ishtam Yoshev Eholim, pulls off not just a heist, not just a birth explosion, but a miraculous birth explosion. And then it gets better. Because the Possuk says, Because the Possuk says that he only did this with the strong sheep. Remember, the initial understanding was that the spotted and speckled sheep are the weak sheep. The white sheep are the strong ones. Yaakov flips it. Bahati fatzoin lo, the later Possuk Mem Dalet, Bahati fatzoin lo yosim. When the weak animals would come and drink, Yaakov wouldn't put the sticks there. V'hakshurim, only the strong animals, when they came to drink, Yaakov would put the sticks there. V'hoyu ha'atufim l'Lavan v'hakshurim l'Yaakov. So it so happened that Yaakov, over the course of time, creates this divide, where the weak sheep, they're all the ones that are white. They end up going to Lavan. And the strong sheep all emerge spotted and speckled and brown, so that Yaakov keeps them. V'hoyu ha'atufim l'Lavan v'hakshurim l'Yaakov. Those, the feeble, weak animals, they end up, all that Lavan's left with is the weak, sheepish sheep, so to speak. V'hakshurim l'Yaakov, the strong ones went to Yaakov. Now, this is incredible. How Yaakov pulled this off, this is impressive. Zok the Baal Haturim, the word Atur, this is a shrek lecha Baal Haturim, oyim v'noira. Says the Baal Haturim, the word atufim, again, in English, in context, atufim here translates it as the feeble ones, the weak ones. Says the Baal Haturim, the word atufim appears one more place in the Torah. You know where? Megillas Eicha. Perek Beis Possuk Yutes. Tell me if this Possuk sounds, if you remember it from Megillas Eicha. Kumi roini balayla. Get up, says Megillas Eicha, in the middle of the night. Kumi roini balayla. Cry out in the night. Rosh Hashmurais. Shivchi kamayim libeich. How many songs have been made of these words? Shivchi kamayim. Pour out your heart like water. Noichach pnei Hashem, in the presence of Hashem. Why? Al nefesh oilalayich, for the souls of your sucklings, for the infants. Hoatufim barov. Hoatufim barov, who are fainting from hunger. I have to be honest with you. I'm a little hesitant to read this Baal Haturim, but if the Baal Haturim says it, the Baal Haturim says it. Oyim v'noira. Oyim v'noira. Here's what the Baal Haturim says. Inami, says the Baal Haturim, b'shvil she'os. What's the connection? Ho'atufim l'Lavan and ho'atufim b'rov. The sheep of love, the sheep that Yaakov leaves over for Lavan, are described as atufim, as feeble sheep. And later in Megillas Eicha, when it describes the churban and the devastation and the starvation and the persecution and Rahman al-Islam, the torture that the Jewish people went through, it talks about little children dying of starvation as atufim barov. Again, words of the Baal Haturim. Inami b'shvil she'osa Yaakov dover shenira keramos. Because Yaakov did something that appeared, what Yaakov did appeared, says the Baal Haturim, keramos. It appeared like trickery. Baal Haturim acknowledges head on. B'shvil she'osa Yaakov dover. Yaakov did things shenira keramos, that looked like cheating. Right? He didn't tell Lavan in the beginning, I have a way to make all healthy, strong animals produce spotted and speckled and brown cattle and sheep. He didn't tell that to Lavan. He said, whatever will be spotted and speckled will be mine. Whatever not is yours. He didn't tell him, I have a way to peel sticks and put them in the drinking troughs and make the animals pregnant with spotted, speckled animals without even the males being involved. Didn't tell that to Lavan. B'shvil she'asa Yaakov davar shenira karamos. Goram lebonov, says the Baal Haturim, Yaakov caused that his children shenisatfu barov. But the Possuk says they would be hungry, they would be deprived to the point of fainting. Typical Baal Haturim style, period. No explanation. Atufim. V'hoyu atufim l'Lavan and shivchi kamayim libeich seal of kapayich al nefesh oilalayich atufim barov. Atufim. Yaakov pulled off this shtick. It doesn't say that Yaakov actually there was no actual Ramos. Nira Ramos. It looked like Ramos. Goram lebonov. He, Yaakov, caused his descendants shnisatfu barov, that they were dying of hunger. May Hashem protect us. Okay. Needs to be understood. Azar groise tzaddik like Yaakov, Azar ish tam yoshev v'yolim, should pull off such a heist, and with such, according to the Baal, such disastrous consequences, his descendants paid a heavy price. Next, question 6. There's another consequence that the Midrash tells us about as a result of Yaakov's experiences in the house of Lavan. Rashi also mentions this here. Before Yaakov came to the house of Lavan, Lavan had daughters, but no sons. Right? We know this. Rashi brings very famously, because if he would have had sons, there's no way he would have sent Rachel, his daughter, to take the sheep to go and get water. No way. Before Yaakov comes to Lavan, Lavan had no sons. After Yaakov comes to Lavan's house, Lavan's house is blessed. Among the blessings that Yaakov brings to Lavan's house is that Lavan has sons, right? Mazel Tov, Shalom Zachar Bris. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Lavan has sons. No Mazel Tov. Do you know who was born, who was descendant from the sons of Lavan? Bilam. Bilam or Russia. Later on, who will seek to curse the Jews. Bilam or Russia later on will read, who set a trap, who advised Balak how to get the Jews to sin. Bilam or Russia was responsible through his bad advice for the deaths, Rahman al-Itzlan, of 200,000 Jews. Was born to Lavan, was a descendant of Lavan through Lavan's sons, not through his daughters. And the Midrash says this unequivocally. Make no mistake. It was thanks to Yaakov going to Lavan's house that the Rebbeinu Shloim blessed Lavan, because wherever Yaakov goes, wherever a tzaddik goes, brachas accompany them, right? Where Yitzchak went, brachas accompanied him. Where Avraham went, brachas accompanied him. So Yaakov goes to Lavan's house. Like, great. Nichashti, Lavan says, even I can tell. By Yavorcheni Hashem biglalech, I have sons. And those sons produce a Bilam or Russia. Once again, because of Yaakov. If Yaakov hadn't gone to the Midrash says, I'm not making this up. If Yaakov hadn't gone to Lavan's house, Lavan would never have had sons. And Bilam would never come to him. Bilam would never have come from him. Maybe Bilam would have never been born. Who knows? We don't, to the best of my knowledge, we don't find anywhere that Yaakov is held responsible for that. At no point do we turn around and say, Yaakov, what'd you come here for? As a result of this, now Lavan has sons. From these sons will come Bilam. He couldn't go somewhere else. All right, Yaakov was following the advice of his mother. His mother told him, so his mother should be responsible. For saying, for putting Dina in a box, Rahman al-Islam, Dina is violated. All right, well, that we also need to understand, because from that violation comes Ephraim and Menashe. But somehow this is a disastrous consequence. Dina is violated. And for showing up at Lavan's house and being responsible for Lavan having sons, from whom comes Bilam, gone for that nothing. Very difficult to understand. And finally, question number 7. Yaakov devises this whole plan. And the purpose of the whole thing is so that when Lavan comes with kindness and with claims and that you took something from me, the proof will be in the pudding. Yaakov says, look, we agree that all the spotted and speckled sheep will be mine, yeah? Let me ask you a question. How does this part of Yaakov's plan work out? All the way at the end of the Parsha, the beginning of the 7th Aliyah, I believe. Here. All the way at the end. Perek Lamed Aleph, Possuk Mem Gimel. Yaakov and Lavan are arguing back and forth. Yaakov says, I don't know what you want from me. I worked for 20 years. Lavan looks everywhere for his avodah zarah. He can't find it. Vayan Lavan vayomer al Yaakov. Beginning of first Possuk, the 7th Aliyah. Lavan says to Yaakov, Lavan says to him, I don't know why you're upset. Habonos benoisai. The daughters that you're married to are mine. Habonim bonai, their children. Bonai are my children, my grandchildren. V'hatsoin soini. And the sheep that you have, the flock that you have, are mine. V'choil asher atoroya lihu. Everything that you see here is mine. This is crazy. So after the whole thing is over, and Yaakov designs this incredible plan, so that so that when the day comes, Yaakov anticipates correctly, and you, Lavan, are going to come after me, guns blazing, and all the rest of it. Yaakov says, I'll have a beautiful answer for you. I'll tell you, I only agreed to take the spotted and the speckled animals. You know what happened? The day that Yaakov anticipated came, and Lavan looked him in the face and said, I own your wives, I own your children, and I own all your flock. I'm not saying Lavan was right, but I'm saying it's very hard to understand how Yaakov's plan materializes here. What, in other words, like this. Was he trying? Did he believe that at some point he'll actually be able to have an answer that Lavan will be forced to accept? Yes or no? Did Yaakov think that at some point he would give Lavan an answer that Lavan would be forced to accept and acknowledge and say, you're right and I'm wrong? Did Yaakov think that he could ever get to that point with Lavan? Yes or no? If he did not think so, then why are we making this whole, who's he trying to defend himself to? If in the end Lavan is such a scammer that there's nothing you can say to convince him, he'll never accept it anyways, then why are you trying to present yourself in such a way that you will have an ability to defend yourself? Why are you trying to arm yourself with a defense against the person before whom you're defenseless? And if Yaakov does think that there is a way, if it is possible to make an ironclad contract, a prenuptial agreement, so to speak, that will be so ironclad that it'll hold up in court, if that's what Yaakov thinks, then he's failed. And he's failed to do what it is that he thought he could do. Yaakov thought he could position himself for success in such a way that when Lavan comes to him, guns blazing, and says, you took my stuff, Yaakov says, we'll go through the sheep, we'll take a look, and whatever you see there that's not spotted and speckled is stolen. You know what happened in the end? Lavan chases after him. Not only does Lavan tell him, all your animals are mine, but he tells him, your wives and your children are mine too. So at least on the surface, it seems like there's no winning with this guy anyways. There's anyways no winning with this guy. So if there's no winning with him, so why are we bothering with this? Does Yaakov really think that he'll be able to defend himself? In other words, of course he can defend himself. He can say whatever you want, but Lavan's not going to accept it. And if Lavan's anyways not going to accept it, then why are you positioning yourself in such a way that you have a plausible defense? The whole thing seems difficult to understand. All right, let's review. And I got 5 or 10 minutes to be able to answer. Okay, quickly. Number one, the Midrash says, the Possuk, Yaakov says, my taking the spotted, speckled animals will position me in such a way that in the future, if you ever come to me with complaints, I'll be able to prove my innocence. The Midrash says Hashem was very unhappy because of this. As a result of this, Dinah was violated. Question number one does not seem proportionate. For saying this, Dinah should be violated. Rahman al-Islam, his daughter. Difficult to understand. Question number two, the Midrash also gives a different reason why Dinah is violated. Because Yaakov locked Dinah up in a box and didn't allow her to marry Eicha. So which one is it? Question number three, from Dinah being violated, Osnat is born. From Osnat ends up marrying Yosef. From them become Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim and Manasseh are part of the 12 Shvatim. So that means if Dinah hadn't been violated, the 12 Shvatim wouldn't be complete. So is it a bad thing that Dinah is violated? Yes or no? If yes, if it is a bad thing, then how is it that from there come Ephraim and Manasseh? Without the 12 Shvatim wouldn't be complete. And if it's not a bad thing, then why are we saying that this is a punishment for Yaakov? Question four, although Yaakov comes into this seemingly very innocently, he generates some kind of a miraculous birth explosion among the cattle, takes it all, and question number five, the Baal Haturim says on the word atufim that Yaakov did something that was nira karamos, that appeared like trickery, and because of that, in the future descendants Jews would suffer as a result of Yaakov's seeming sin. They would suffer with atufim barav, with hunger. Question six. Yaakov's coming to Lavan is responsible for the birth of Bilam. Otherwise, Bilam would never be born. And finally, question 7, all of Yaakov's efforts to justify himself before Lavan seem to fall flat when Lavan turns to him in the end and says, your daughters are mine, your sons are mine, and even your animals, even your flock are mine. Okay. So what do we do with all of these questions? Okay. Now, sometimes the questions are better than the answers. I shouldn't say sometimes. The questions are always better than the answers, but bear with me because I think there's one thread here. I think there's one idea that pervades through everything that is incredibly important to understand in what the Torah is trying to teach us over here. And really in the mission statement of Yaakov's life. Okay. The commentaries on this Midrash about Va'onsa Bitzit Kosi, they articulate a very interesting depth to the Midrash. They say when Yaakov told Lavan V'onsa bitzit kosi b'yoyim mochar, he didn't just mean that if Lavan will come to him with any complaints, if Lavan will come to him with any tinus, why'd you steal my sheep? Then there'll be a readily easy way to determine who's lying and who's telling the truth. He meant more than that. Yaakov said to him, Yaakov said, the commentaries say, Yaakov articulated everything to Lavan. Yaakov told him, by the amount of sheep that will be born spotted and speckled, that will testify to my tzidkes. That will stand. That will testify on my behalf that I am a tzaddik b'yoyim mochar in the future when you'll come and say Yaakov is a scandal, Yaakov is a scandal, whatever the case may be. In other words, let's say the supernatural way of how the sheep will be born here, this will testify on my behalf in the future that I am talking about tzaddik. Okay. Also, this, in other words, and this will stand as a testament to my tzidkes, to my connection with Hashem, that despite the fact that I lived 20 years in the house of Lavan, I never became perverted, I never allowed myself to become subject to the foreign influences, etc. I remained, all right. For some, and that the Rabbanu Shloim wasn't happy with. Hashem said, no, don't boast about what's going to happen tomorrow. Don't gloat that in the future this will be a testament to your tzidkes. You can't do that. Al tishalal b'yoyim mochar. Say that. I think what the commentaries are saying here is there's another layer of depth to it. I'll tell you what it is. Bekitzer, in brief, how does Yaakov end up here in the house of Lavan? What's he doing here? What is Yaakov doing here? The answer is he's running from his brother Esav. Okay, why is he running from his brother Esav? Because he took the brachas. The brachas of Yitzchak were at some point were intended by Yitzchak to go to Esav, and Yaakov somehow went in there and he took the brachas. Okay, he put on Esav's garments. He said the words Anochi Esav, right? He said Anochi Esav b'cheirecha. He went in there. All right, he pretended. The Possuk says Yitzchak didn't recognize him, and he gave him the bracha. From a deeper perspective, from a ruchniistic, from a spiritual, listen to me very carefully. From a spiritual perspective, the moment Yaakov put on Esav's garments and walked into his father Yitzchak and said, Anochi Esav b'cheirecha, at that moment, everything changed. The existence of Yaakov changed. The mission that Yaakov's shlichus maybe didn't change. It was taken to the next level. It was deepened. Something very profound is articulated here. From this moment and on, there is a clearly stated mission statement for Yaakov and for all of his descendants. And I'll tell you exactly what it is. In the language of Chassidus, we call this la'afocha or la'ahafocha chashoicha le'nehoira. To transform darkness into light. When Yaakov put on Esav's garments and he walked into his father and he said, Anochi Esav b'cheirecha, he wasn't lying, chas v'shalom, obviously. What he was saying in a spiritual sense, what he was telling his father Yitzchak, is give me the brachas. Give me this spiritual boost. I will take it and I will go to every Esav, to every dark spot, every dark place in the world. And as a Yid, I will transform that darkness into light. I will take that Esav and make him into, so to speak, a Baal Tshuva. I will take every dark spot in the world. I will wrestle it. I will battle it, but not battle it. Here's the point. Not battle it and destroy it, but battle it and transform it. Again, in the language of Kabbalah and Chassidus, we talk about two ways. What do you do? The Rabbanu Shalom didn't just create positivity, holiness, good things in the world. The Rabbanu Shalom also created darkness and negativity. Now you can ask why. One day we'll ask the Eibishter why, because it should be free choice. But the Eibishter created it too, and it's very powerful. So how do you deal with this? One theory is actually to destroy it. By the way, that was Yitzchak's plan in giving the brachas to Esav. He would have just destroyed the negativity. The other approach is Rivka and Yaakov's plan, that Esav should go and put on the garments of Yaakov. Say the words, Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha. Buy the birthright from Esav. In other words, take all of that energy, take it and somehow transform it from negative into positive, right? Like the idea of a Baal Tshuva being on a higher level than a tzaddik. Why? Because he's taken that darkness and he's transformed it into something holy. From here on, from once Yaakov does that, and Yitzchak gives him the brachas, and he tells him, you'll be a master over Esav, which means you'll own him, so to speak. Mashet kana eved kana Rabba. He'll be your slave. Whatever he has will be yours. You'll be able to be cleaned. You'll be able to elevate it to holiness. Yaakov sets down a path which is incredibly powerful and incredibly painful. Because now Yaakov's got to wrestle with every darkness in the world. Yaakov, we're talking about Yaakov and all of his descendants for all future times, got to wrestle with every element of darkness in the world and transform it. This, by the way, is the first inkling here of understanding why the Rabbi Shalom was upset with Yaakov for not letting Dinah marry Esav. The Rabbi Shalom, just 1 second. You put on Esav's garments. You went in there and said, Anoichi Esav. You took the bracha. Now you're the master of Esav, in a physical sense and in a spiritual sense. So now you can transform him. So if you can transform him, why are you holding Dinah away? In other words, at this point, in a spiritual sense, Yaakov should have understood. This is the shot. Yaakov should have understood that by giving Dinah to Esav, Yitzchak would have transformed Esav, and he would have made Esav into a Baal Tshuva. But Yaakov says, let's answer the question. Based on this, Yaakov says to Lavan, Yaakov says to Lavan, listen to me. My tzidkus, my righteousness, the commentaries say, is going to be evident in the future. How? What did Yaakov mean? Yaakov meant that one day when you love and come to me shouting and screaming, I'll be able to prove it to you. Yaakov knew there was no way he could prove anything to Lavan. Lavan wasn't interested. He can't talk to a person who's not interested in listening. Cannot remember. If there's one thing you remember from the Shiur, let it be this. You cannot talk to a person who isn't interested in listening. You can talk to a wall. Yaakov didn't know what he was dealing with. He's living with the guy for 20 years. That's not what Yaakov means. Yeah, that's not what Yaakov means. Says Yaakov to Lavan, listen to me, says Yaakov to Lavan. I'm leaving you. But I'm not really leaving you. I'm leaving you physically, but I'm not leaving you spiritually. My tzidkus, says Yaakov to Lavan, is not just a tzidkus for me. In the end, it's a tzidkus for you. My righteousness is not restricted to me. You, the Lavan, in the end, I'm going to transform you too. I'm going to transform you, and I'm going to transform Esav, and I'm going to transform Shem, and I'm going to transform every darkness in the world, me and my descendants. If we have to pay for it with our lives, or atufin berov, we're going to do this. We're going to spend 3,500 years doing in this avodah. Every corner, every element of darkness We will wrestle it, but not to destroy it, to transform it. Yaakov says to Lavan, you're going to be upset. You're going to sit there. You're going to shout and you say, but it's all mine. The daughters are mine. The sons are mine. The sheep are mine. Everything is mine. And you're not wrong. Because you, as a Lavan, as your daughters, as your sons, as your sheep, are going to be transformed into holiness. The Rabbi Shalom says, really? Not because he didn't believe. The Rabbi Shalom knew that this is exactly what Yaakov is going to do. Says the Rabbi Shalom, yeah. But in order for that to happen, we need Dina, your daughter, who's going to go out and who's going to be Rahman al-Islam violated by Shem. But when she'll be violated by Shem, that will complete the 12 Shvatim. The 12 Shvatim will be completed because from this will come Osnat, and from Osnat will come Ephraim, Menashe, Kiruvain, Veshimon, Yuli. The Rabban Shalom says, this is not just for your descendants. You're going to have to do this yourself. And Yaakov does. In the end, the two Midrashim that says that Dina was abducted because Yaakov said, "V'onsa b'tzidkasi," and Dina is abducted because Yaakov put Dina in a box and didn't let him marry Esau. It's the same thing. So which one is it, this or that? It's the same thing. Yaakov's declaration of his readiness and his willingness to wrestle and battle and deal with every element of darkness for all future times. This is the reason why Dina is abducted, because when Dina, in the language of Kabbalah, I'm intentionally hesitant to use this term because when people hear it, kind of like their mind sort of switches off. In the language of Kabbalah, we call this collecting and elevating the sparks. There's sparks of godliness everywhere. The sparks of godliness in Lavan. The sparks of godliness in Lavan's sheep. The sparks of godliness in Esau. The sparks of godliness in Shechem. The sparks of godliness even in Bilam, Rahman al-Islam. And the Jews would and will spend the rest of Jewish history elevating and collecting, transforming every element of existence into holiness. Look, it isn't intended to justify, Rahman al-Islam, the suffering of the Jews. It's intended to give us perspective. Our great-grandfather Yakov signed up for this, and by doing so, signed up every one of us until the coming of Mashiach, may it be speedily in our days. Yaakov knew from the moment Yaakov put on Esau's garments, Yaakov knew Jewish history would be a long and painful experience. But he also knew that the Jews would emerge victorious, that the Jews would emerge triumphant, and that they would take everything along the way. Everything. Like every bitterness that they go through, everything, they would take it and they would bring it to the house of Hashem, that they would bring it to the house of the Jewish people. That the Jewish people in the end would emerge not just victorious in their own right, but that they would take every experience along the way and use it to build themselves, to build the world into the place the Rabban Shalom designed it to be, and to reveal Hashem's presence in any and every opportunity and experience the Jews would experience throughout all of Jewish history. All right, I believe this answers all of the questions. The two Midrashim explaining why Yaakov had this happen to his daughter are one, really saying the same thing. It was the same idea, was that there was the mission statement that Yaakov had signed up for, to bring Elokus, to bring godliness to the dark places, both with regard to Lavan and with regard to Esau. How it played out practically in Yaakov's case, it plays out through Dina, who is abducted by Shechem, from whom come Ephraim and Menashe. Yaakov is obviously not trying to scam. Looked like he was scamming, but he wasn't obviously scamming Lavan. He was just revealing the true inner godliness of everything that was behind it, including the descendant who would one day come from this Bilam, who also in the end plays a part in this role, as we see clearly by the fact that all the klolos of Bilam in the end are transformed into blessings. And even though Lavan in the end doesn't necessarily see it, Lavan says everything is mine. Yaakov says, of course everything is yours. And as it is yours, I transform it, as Jews always do, into holiness and into blessings for the Jewish people. May Hashem continue to bless all Jews, all around the world as we once again battle darkness. As we went this week, Rahman al-Islam, we heard about more hostages. May Hashem protect us who were killed by our enemies. Their neshamas should have an aliyah. They should be ushered into Gan Eden. They should go before the Rabbanu Shalom and bang on the Kisei Yaakov and insist that the Rabbanu Shalom declare an end to this miserable and bitter golus. We've elevated all the sparks, we've transformed everything that needs to be transformed. We've gone through enough Lavans and enough Esavs and enough Bilams and enough Shechems and enough Rahman al-Islam, Hamasnikes and Sinwars and Chizbala, which in Yotze given Mahadrin and Mahadrin. We did everything we were supposed to. And we're here and we're loyal. The Rabbanu Shalom should bless us. The Rabbanu Shalom should transform all the klolos, the klolos of all of Bilam and all of Jewish history. Miklala levracha, ki yahevcha Hashem alakecha. The Rabbanu Shalom loves us all and should fill our lives only with brachas and simchas. Amen. Ken yehi ratzain. Thank you for being here together with me.